So, in reference to something that we were discussing on stream earlier, it turns out that Laurence Fox, right, is going to be running for an MP. Now, there's going to be an Uxbridge and South Ruislip. This is the constituency that's been vacated by Boris Johnson, who has officially resigned as an MP as of today. He has become a steward and bailiff of the 300 of Chiltern, which is the most ridiculous phrase I've ever heard, and proves that our country is not a real country, as indeed a joke country in a made-up period drama. But he is indeed running in the seat to try and contest the vacant one that has been departed by Boris Johnson. Now, this is as part of the Reclaim Party, which is the party that is run by Laurence Fox and was used to be run by another person, but I think that they've stopped now. I think Martin Daubney used to be involved in the Reclaim Party. Now, their platform is weird. It's not a particularly fleshed out platform that they're running on, but the main thrust of Reclaim is anti-lockdown, anti-vaccine stuff. Now, Laurence Fox, obviously, massive headbanger, big. He's phenomenally anti-queer. Like, he's been Pride Month has triggered this man no end. He's lost his marbles over Pride Month. But he's clearly very triggered about the vaccines and stuff like that. And you would think so, because the only Reclaim Party MP that we have at the moment is Andrew Bridgen, who was suspended from the Conservative Party, or expelled from the Conservative Party, for comparing the vaccine rollout to the Holocaust, which not only is ridiculous, but also very anti-Semitic. To make these ridiculous comparisons with the crime of what happened in 1940s Germany, no less. So it just shows you the kind of caliber of politicians that you have, kind of serial Twitter angry man, Laurence Fox, who seems to just say provocative stuff for attention and then trying to ride this for a potential political run, who is, anti-science with regards to his particular discussion on vaccines, and also he's a GB News anchor as well, so even in spite of the platform he's been given by all of these right-wing think tanks and private equity firms who invested in GB News to give him an additional platform, whilst giving platforms on the BBC, he still is not a successful man. The Reclaim Party have very few supporters, apart from very tiny small number of online headbangers, really and truly. Which is interesting, right? So this is the article that we've got from LBC. He's going to run in the former constituency of Boris Johnson, and it's interesting because, from what I'm aware of, I believe that Laurence Fox wasn't a massive fan of Boris Johnson specifically because of Boris Johnson being pro-vaccine. Because again, all of this is based upon the conservative policies during lockdown, which again, I think most people have moved on. I think from being super critical of lockdown politics. Because that's all gone now, really and truly. Like, most of us have just passed this. We're back to living our lives. Obviously, this is slightly ill-advised. The pandemic is still around, but most people have now moved on from new pandemic politics, really and truly. So the fact that Laurence Fox thinks that this is some kind of suitable platform to gain some kind of populist edge doesn't make much sense to me. Also, he's been in the news recently for wanting to sue a random anonymous Twitter account for calling him racist, in the most kind of demented fashion, really, truly. The man has lost all of his marbles and his tiny little mind, which does indeed exist. I've seen it. There is some mind in there somewhere, but it's not very big. And what's interesting as well about this is that Reform UK these are both kind of right-wing populist parties, Reclaim and Reform, but Reform UK are the one with any actual public support, right? Like, Reform UK are polling around about 6%, with what we're seeing from the kind of general polling average, and they've got much more popular figures behind them, right? Laurence Fox is very, very much fringe kind of conspiracy theorist type. But there are mainstream politicians involved with Reform UK, people like Nigel Farage, the president. Richard Tice is a presenter on Talk TV, for example. We have Ben Habib, like a businessman who's there, and Alex Phillips, who gets invited on as a pundit on loads of different shows, right? So Reform UK have lots of heavy weight behind them, lots more funding behind them, and far more popular support. Yet Reform UK have stood down to let serial loser and moron Laurence Fox, with his party with very little support, have a free run at taking the seat of Uxbridge and South Ruislip, which seems ridiculous to me, given that Reform UK look like not reasonable, but they look like a normal political party rather than what Reclaim is really and truly just one man's vanity party on the part of Laurence Fox. It seems like really poor politics from Reform UK to stand down in the sea, or to even have an electoral pact with someone who's so toxic, really and truly, right? When Nigel Farage should really be asking Laurence Fox to stand down so that Reform UK can have a good shot at this, because Reform UK are the only people polling at all. The Reclaim Party are so unknown and so with so little platform, they don't even get included on the polling averages. And you'd think that if Reform UK want to, as Nigel Farage has said, potentially have 10 or so Conservative MPs moving over from them to Reform UK to attack the Tories from the proverbial right, you'd think that they would then, with their large names and big polling lead, want to try and ensure that the Reclaim Party don't split any votes at all by ensuring that they become a political irrelevancy and keeping them a political irrelevancy. Boosting this party in this way by not running a candidate in Uxbridge and South Ruislip and giving them a free run, it seems like silly politics. Not only because it damages your brand by being associated with complete idiots like Laurence Fox and Andrew Bridgen, but it also means that in future you're potentially looking at not just a vote split, but a platform split as well. But there being no kind of unity of message, some kind of unity of platform, it doesn't make any sense to me from a political perspective. But, Nigel Farage is the one who's been politically successful over the past 20 years. So what do I really and truly know about all this kind of stuff, really and truly? Because Reform UK have a very clear stance about being pro-Brexit and being pro-Liz Truss style free market reform, which you're not really getting really and truly from Reclaim, which just seemed to be a culture war party. Just seemed to be a culture war party to fight against the existence of trans people, and that structural racism is a thing that exists and is bad. So I'm not sure what's going on here, really and truly. Obviously, Laurence Fox shares the similar opinions that Richard Tice does about Labour and the Conservatives being very similar, although Richard Tice calls them both socialist parties, which is obviously very silly. And, Reform UK, at least people in Reform UK, there are some people there like Ben Habib who just exist there to be talking about economic policy, right? Their economic policy is dumb and it won't work, but at least they're saying, look, we need growth, we need increase in living standards, right? Let's do this supply side economic stuff that hasn't worked before, but at least we should try it. At least he's bringing a platform to the table. Whereas Laurence Fox is looking at a country that cares about the NHS, that cares about the cost of living, that cares about public services, and saying, screw all that, let's talk about trans people's genitals, and let's talk about the fact that the lockdowns were bad and that everyone got vaccinated. It seems like this is like the political death knell for a future attack of the Conservative Party from the right by making them look completely unelectable. Like, totally unelectable. So unelectable, in fact, that Laurence Fox actually ran for London mayor back at the last London mayoral election, loses £10,000 in his deposit with fewer than 2% of the votes. And obviously Uxbridge and South Ruislip is a London seat, so it's a similar electorate that he's going to be pitching at. He did so bad as an anti-woke candidate, which we've seen from all of the stats from the FT polling these people, that people do not care about the anti-woke stuff. And in fact, it turns people off. When people think you're anti-woke, what? Do you not care about the bread and butter issues? You seem completely unserious by talking about these culture war stuff when we want to see bread and butter economic issues be the main thrust of your policy. And he was so unliked. He lost to a YouTuber, Nika Omalana, the meme comedy YouTuber who ran as a joke, including price-fixing Freddos at 5p and removing racists' teeth in Minecraft. Apparently, that person who just ran as a joke got more votes than this guy in the London mayoral election. So he already has a proven track record of being unelectable, on top of the fact that he's a very silly person who's completely out of touch with the general electorate, and who doesn't have any real economic policies. I don't know what Reform UK are doing here. Like, I have this weird null part of my brain that wants Reform UK to become a force in politics. Even though I think that what they do is very dangerous, I do think, though, that, first of all, having a right-wing vote split in this country makes there a bigger case for electoral reform. But also I think that there are a bunch of right-wing, libertarian-style free marketers in this country who want to see somebody challenging from the Conservative Party from the right, and they can't get it because of the first past the post. And I think that given that there's a genuine group of people that this party should theoretically represent, them not having any electoral representation is bad for democracy. And pushing the case for electoral reform, undermining the Conservative vote so that we can undermine the Labour vote from the left as well to make our political parties and a political system in our democracy more pluralistic rather than centred around two identical neoliberal parties. I think that's good for democracy, even though I think Reform UK as a party are pretty rancid and Reclaim are even worse. But I just do not know what Farage and Tice are doing by letting this absolute idiot be somebody who they feel like they can be in a coalition with. Be careful what you wish for; you might just get it. I mean, potentially, but I think that maybe it's wishful thinking as well for me. I think that Reform UK are just enough outside of the general realm of political thought in this country that they could never win an election or probably never win any MPs, but they'd be big enough with enough of a following to maintain a force in politics to undermine the Conservative voter base. Because you can't really, at the moment, the only vote split in politics under first past post is happening on the left, quote unquote left, between a right-wing Labour Party, a right-wing Liberal Democrat Party, and a left-wing Green Party. So I think that, if you want there to be the scope for left-wingers to vote properly for electoral reform for something that actually represents their interests, without worrying about the Conservative Party being put into government based off a vote split on the left, there needs to be a vote split on the right to counteract that, and more plurality of right-wing voices across the country. And to do that, you're going to have to challenge the Conservative Party. I think Reform UK are in a good position to do that, especially as Nigel Farage is somebody with a big enough platform to make these people a relevant political force. And I understand how dangerous that might be, but, I think that creating a pluralistic democracy, forcing through the case of proportional representation, because at least Nigel Farage believes that proportional representation is something that should happen in this country, or electoral reform is necessary, whereas all of the establishment figures in the Conservative Party want to maintain their vice grip on right-wing politics in this country by ensuring that the voter system locks out any competition from the right. And Ben Habib put it correctly. I hate to give him his plaudits, but he said on GB News that they cannot... they say the Conservatives have failed because they have, and they said, well, you cannot reward these people with incumbency. They can never be rewarded with incumbency, and I think that's what we have to do on the left as well. We have to look at people like Keir Starmer and say, you're providing nothing, you're fixing nothing, you're going to continually manage the decline of this country, and to reward you with victory, to reward you a future Keir Starmer government with incumbency. You can't do that, otherwise you're just digging your own grave into further decline. And I think Ben Habib was right, and right-wingers should realise that, if you want a Conservative Party, you can't just continue supporting them and rewarding them with a political incumbency platform. And obviously UKIP did this for ages. They won one seat with Douglas Carswell, but they still ate into the Conservative vote for years and years and years and years, and ironically led to the Brexit vote. And that's why I think that on the left, we should be using this platform too to say, look, well, we'll vote for the Green Party regardless, because they're the only people with a proper left-wing platform. And unless Labour comes to us, we won't vote for them. We'll vote split. Tough shit. If you lose an election because you're not appealing to our material interests, then that's your fault. I mean, it's clear that the right wing are so frustrated with Conservative Party politics in this country. Ironically, the space that the right wing have to attack the Conservative Party exists in the biggest form it has done in a decade, really and truly, because they want to ensure that they can undermine the Conservative Party without there being the chance of a leftist being elected. And now that the left have been shut out of politics because of Keir Starmer's purges, and Keir Starmer is promising a platform so right-wing and so free market orientated that even Tom Harwood of GB News fame, sharing a platform with Laurence Fox and Nigel Farage, no less, Tom Harwood was saying, well, actually, Rachel Reeves is the true heir to Liz Truss and Trussism. So, if you want to see, the kind of policies that the right wing want, you should be supporting Rachel Reeves's plan should it come to theoretical fruition. And so with that being the potential as what would be the incumbent party, should the Conservatives be ousted by an attack from the right wing know they don't have to care. They don't have to care about the potential left-wing government because there is no left-wing opposition anymore. So now is the time for Reform UK to attack them from the right and just say, look, well, Labour win, Starmer's not going to do any damage, he's not going to change the economy, nothing will fundamentally change. So we have time to undermine the Conservative Party and then become the new right-wing force in politics. So now really is the time to strike, and it just doesn't make any sense to me that Reform UK are allying themselves with somebody who will, quite frankly, kill any political prospects for them because he's so, like, universally unliked, really and truly, and on a weird platform that's not going to engage voters at all. So yeah, that should be fun, right? In the Reform UK are just letting him have a go at it to humiliate him so badly that the Reclaim Party just stop being an electoral force, right? If Laurence Fox does as bad now in this by-election as he did in the mayoral election, maybe Reform UK are thinking, well, hang on a minute, okay, maybe Laurence Fox will humiliate himself so badly, Reclaim Party never even bother challenging Reform UK at all, and Reform UK absorb all of that voter base on some other platform other than anti-vax, anti-lockdown, conspiracy theory shit. Which is, I guess that's an improvement, slightly. At least Reform UK said they was going to nationalise the energy sector if they couldn't bring down prices, which is more than you're getting from the Conservatives. But maybe that's their game. Maybe the game is, well, the by-election doesn't matter because what really matters is the next election. So let's let Laurence Fox humiliate himself, and then we'll come in for the kill. That'd be really interesting if that happens. So we shall see. We shall see. But either way, that's definitely one to watch out for, and something that could be very amusing to see him lose his deposit and get humiliated, just like he did in the mayoral election, because everyone hates him. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider liking and subscribing. It does help out the channel and the algorithm, and if you click the bell notification icon, it will let you know when I go live and when I upload videos. If you'd like to follow me on social media, my handle is @NoJusticeMTG, and that is Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. If you want to support my channel in a more financial manner, you can do so by becoming a member for just 99p, by super chatting, or by supporting me on Patreon, with the link is in the description of this video, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next segment.